Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
The Thin Man Goes Home is over. I want to do a little business with a blonde.
You leave me alone, you hear? You leave me alone. I don't want to answer any questions. Now get out.
Oh, Nicky. Nicky, you're driving me crazy. This case is serious. And all you do is fuddle around and guzzle cider.
Now, Swiss prune juice. You have to have someone who could operate freely and without arousing suspicion. Someone who knew Peter Burton and could get him to do the work for you. When we find who that individual was...
Nick! Look out!
Thin Man Goes Home, Andy. It's the 5th Thin Man movie.
It is. He's finally going home.
He's finally going home. God love him. I was worried, as I want to do. I did not read any of the synopsis. I did not know what this movie was going to be about when I started it. And I was worried that this was going to be a movie about domestication of Charleses, that they were going to, like, I don't know, buy a new house together or something. And it was just going to be something about them all going home and their kid again. And I have to say I was relieved that they went to Nick's childhood home.
It's interesting that was your read. My read on it, knowing that it was during the war, is that it somehow was tied into like the war efforts. Like the Thin Man goes home, like he had gone overseas and now he was coming back with the troops or something like that. Like,
oh.
Yeah, that was kind of the way that I had read it. So it's interesting that we both had different reads on the title and both were completely wrong. Because yes, he goes back to gaze at a windmill.
He does. He gazed at the windmill. That is what he did, and it was fine. Did you like it as the fifth in the series? Like, at this point, is it a little bit long in the tooth for you?
I loved it, actually. I was a little worried when it started because it took a long time to really get stuff going. I'm like, wow, we're just really setting up the old hometown and his parents and his Nick's desire for his getting a pat on the back from his dad for the career choice of his, meeting all the people from town that Nick knew as a kid. Like, it really took a while to get things going. Once the mystery got started and once we have the guy knocking on the door and then falling over dead, like, things really got moving. And I really enjoyed the way the mystery went. We didn't have any of that like the nonsensical villain who could prognosticate the future and was having dreams, that crazy sort of story. Like, this story, it was a good mystery. There was interesting things that were happening. There were interesting things that were kind of being developed with the mystery that all kind of tied into things going on in the town. And I liked the way that it set up this idea of even a peaceful little burg like this town where he's from.
Sycamore Springs.
Sycamore Springs. Once you start poking at the skeletons in the closet, they start coming out. And the way that played out and the way that it worked with Nora dropping hints that Nick was here to investigate something and how that actually created this mystery to like opened these doors and all these skeletons came out. Like, it worked really well. I really, really enjoyed this one. And I was thrilled that by this point in the series, they were able to still put something together that was a solid mystery and had great comedy.
Me too. And even as a fifth movie, I still found myself enjoying the ride, even if it wasn't the ride I expected or in some cases even hoped for.
Interesting. Well, when this film came out, it was approved. Just like before.
Just like all the other ones.
Yes, just like before.
So what do I mean when I say that it wasn't the movie I was kind of hoping for? Here's the thing. I didn't laugh very much at this movie. I didn't get the comedy that I feel like I had, especially between the sort of the couple comedy between Nick and Nora. It just wasn't funny.
Are you saying it wasn't funny, or are you saying it wasn't laugh out loud funny?
I think mostly I didn't find it funny.
Okay.
There were a couple of gags, trying to wrap the dog up in the fur and the squeezing down the crowded train tunnel. That was cute. And so there were moments. I liked the treatment of Nick and his cider in that giant flask. Like, that seemed like a bit of weird sort of physical prop comedy that I thought was kind of funny. But generally, it didn't have the same comic tone between the last of the movies that we watched, certainly the first three. And I think I was missing that. That's not to say I didn't enjoy the movie. Like, I just enjoy spending time with Nick and Nora Charles. I thought that was fun. But I just didn't find it funny. Charming, not funny, maybe. What do you think? Did it hit you differently?
Well, I found it funny, but I didn't necessarily find it laugh out loud funny. Like in the previous ones, I found myself laughing out loud more often at some of the gags, some of the little nuances, the line deliveries between the two characters. This time, it was a lot more just, smiles at what they were doing, some of the comedy. So, I mean, I suppose to your point, saying it wasn't funny, I'd say, okay, it wasn't laugh out loud funny. It was still cute. It still had its moments. So maybe we're on the same page. We're just approaching it from a different direction.
Yeah.
But this is the first of the last two films where we're not having W.S. Van Dyke at the helm.
Major, the second.
Major Woodbridge Strong Van Dyke II, right,
Yeah.
who had died in 1943. We talked about that a little bit last time, but yeah, he had cancer and a bad heart. And then because he was a devout Christian Scientist, he refused most medical treatments and care during his final years. And so in 1943, he said goodbye to his wife, his kids, studio boss, and then committed suicide. So very tragic end to his life. So, but yeah, so that means they had to bring on a new helm, somebody to helm the film, and that was Richard Thorpe, who took over the director's chair for this film. He was kind of an MGM regular who had been, studio director, constantly working, very typical of the time where, it was like at least one film a year from 1924 to 1967, just constantly busy. Are you familiar much with Richard Thorpe?
Well, I'm sure I've seen Richard Thorpe movies. I'm wondering if it's a Richard Thorpe thing or if it's a Robert Riskin, Dwight Taylor thing, right? Because this is also the first movie one of the movies that isn't written by Hackett and Goodrich that we like so much. And I feel like that they also have a certain knack for writing the couple dialogue that I find really funny. And so between them and Richard Thorpe, I wonder what the mix is of where things sort of suffocated for me. In terms of Richard Thorpe movies, Ivanhoe, it feels like we've seen some Richard Thorpe movies. I haven't looked at Richard Thorpe, too specifically. Are you a Thorpe head?
I don't know, honestly, if I've seen much, if anything else of his, just kind of skimming his filmography. I'm not sure. Maybe like Above Suspicion, that might be something that I've seen, but I don't think much, if anything.
I know the Ivanhoe from 52, Elizabeth Taylor is one. I don't think you hadn't seen that one, right?
That's right. I still haven't seen
That's
that
one that I liked as a kid. Grandma liked it.
Yeah. Jailhouse Rock may be one of the bigger films that people would recognize that he had directed. But again, a film director with a huge list of films.
Yeah.
That because he was really just kind of studio director and just cranked stuff out. So.
Yeah. Tarzan's New York Adventure. Did you see that?
A lot of Tarzan movies. A lot of Tarzan. Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. Two Tarzan films. So, okay. Tarzan Escapes and Tarzan's New York Adventure. Yeah.
So much Tarzan. He escapes and goes to New York. That's enough, Tarzan.
But yeah, it's, with the writers, Riskin and Taylor, and then with Thorpe directing, it is a whole new team of people kind of involved in the project. And so, we like Riskin. Riskin was involved in It Happened One Night, which we've talked about on the show. We really like it. I worked on
totally.
You Can't Take It With You. Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. A film writer who is very well known. And Dwight Taylor, I don't know if they worked together on much.
Well, Taylor then went on to write for the Thin Man TV show, the teleplay, 3 episodes of the teleplay. It's not like it's not like these guys can't write comedy. It's just a different comedy.
It's a different comedy, and it's a story
the kind of that's not funny.
Well,
that's all.
I'm wondering because it's a story it's based on a story that Riskin had written with Harry Kernitz, and I wonder if the story itself was more the mystery. Like I don't know the history of it, but I do wonder: is it a sense of creating a mystery and then, like we've talked about with other franchises before, where they then say, hey, let's now make this a Nick and Nora Charles mystery and, make them the people who are solving this caper. And then they rework the story to fit it into the Thin Man franchise.
Yeah, that's like it's a repurposed. This is the Cloverfield paradox of 1944.
Good God. Better than that.
It's better than that. So all that is to say that it does feel like a different tone. It has all the same people and the same dog, and everything's fine on screen, and it's a fun setup. The idea of Nick and Nora and the dog going back to their to Nick's hometown and kind of reliving his youth by way of this murder mystery is, I think, it's good, and I enjoy my time with it. I love that, he spends an overnight there, and he already wakes up and he's wearing his cardigan sweater over his school T-shirt, like a high school jersey. Like, I thought those things were really super clever and gave us a side of William Powell as an older man that was interesting and fun. So all of that is to say, I like it. I like how they set the table for it. I didn't laugh that much, and I expected to laugh more, and that's okay. This movie also happens to be a movie that took place during the war, was produced during the war, and that also put some constraints on production. In particular, Myrna Loy, who had not been doing any movies. This, in fact, was her only wartime film. She was a staunch advocate and worker for the Red Cross. Do you know more about Myrna's wartime work?
Well, definitely that. Also, she had just gotten married to John Hurts Jr., which is, I think, because I think they were planning on shooting this in 1942. And then, she was dealing with her marriage to him, and so didn't want to deal with the film at that time. And then with everything going on with the war, and then, of course, W.S. Van Dyke's death, there were a lot of things kind of pushing this back. And so, yes, she had been very, very involved in the war. She was working with the Red Cross. She pretty much stopped acting entirely to focus on helping with the war effort. And she, I guess, was so outspoken against Hitler that he put her on his blacklist, and all of her films were banned in Germany. She was also running a naval auxiliary canteen, and she did tours to raise funds for the war. And so it was hard for her to want to return to this particular, or to the industry, because she was really focused on giving back in her community and making sure people were taken care of during the war. And, it was a big thing for a lot of Hollywood people, but definitely with Myrna Loy, that was a huge, huge thing that she really wanted to support and be a part of. The studio had actually started talking about recasting her. I believe that they suggested Irene Dunne might take over the part, and fans reacted very strongly. And so MGM kind of put the kibosh on that. And even Powell said, quote, "The fans wanted Merna and they didn't want anyone else. And I wanted Merna too. Besides the favorable reception of our pictures always received, I must say it was certainly a pleasure to work with her." And, we've talked about this before, but they had done 14 movies together. So clearly they had a strong working relationship. So everybody kind of was in a place where they just wanted to wait until she was ready. And so, yeah, in 1944, she was ready to start working on this. Here we have it, her only wartime film.
Powell looks to be, once again, feeling better.
Yes.
In this movie. He had a rough time 2 movies ago, progressively getting better, rectal cancer.
His cancer, and then also dealing with the death of, who was it? Jean Harlow.
Yeah. I feel like, as evidenced by some of the physical gags, there's a bit in the train station where he keeps falling over the dog, and there's something. Okay, so maybe I lied. I did laugh out loud watching William Powell throwing himself up and down on the floor. That was funny. That was a funny physical gag. I'm a simple man.
Well, even stuff like when he's trying to fix that table and he thinks he fixed it, and it still falls on his head. And then that leads to what, I had quite a chuckle when his dad walks in and just gives him that look like, God, there he is again, drunk and passed out on the floor. Like, come on, that's
right.
Great.
Yeah, you're right. That's funny. And the fact that the table smashing becomes such it is a pleasant callback over and over again, right? The last time the table smashes. What did you think of old Bill Powell in this thing? Apart from looking better and healthier, how do you feel like he did it in this run out? Is he looking tired yet?
No,
I feel like he's still.
I loved him. I thought he was fantastic. I think They wrote out the kid. They wrote out Junior, which I suppose to a certain extent is one of those things that you have to roll your eyes at a little bit. Like, okay, it was just, they didn't want to bother with a kid, so they write him out. He's at school. We didn't want to take him out, so he's, off with a nanny or something who's taking care of him. But I felt that, honestly, it worked not having a kid. I liked the two of them as a couple again. I didn't feel like that had, they had to be tied down taking care of a kid. And it was really like a furthering of his character, because it was a story about him looking for acceptance from his dad for the career that he chose. And he's not really looking for it, but, they keep the whole gag about a pat on his back from his dad for doing the job he does and how he's going to pop a button off his vest. Like, I loved that. I just thought that was a fantastic, bit that they had in this film about a kid looking for acceptance from his dad. And I really enjoyed the way that played out. And I enjoyed the way that, the story also approached alcohol this time, and it gave him another aspect to deal with, the fact that he couldn't have any alcohol while he was in town. So there were a few things with his character that I felt William Powell just really tapped into well in the context of this.
I did too. And I feel like, I don't know that I would have appreciated it as much, when I was younger, because there's something about watching how William Powell sort of channels being an older man at home that I really resonated with. Like, insofar as they wrote the kid out, it's fine. I mean, I didn't, it is not believable when you consider what it is like to be a parent and have your kid thousands of miles away from you, or however far away.
Well, let's say it's not believable for non-one percenters who just have their kid off at boarding school or with their nanny while you're traveling. Right.
The fact that they had that one little note, oh yes, well, we didn't bring him with us, and then never mention the child again, is a sign that's not terribly believable. But I do think it's fun to look at him relating to his older father in a way that adds a different bit of texture to this to the movie in particular. It does lead us into the mystery, talking about what is the mystery and how they get into it, because in terms of architecting the mystery in this movie, that part I really connected with. I loved how they worked into devising Nick getting into a crime to solve, and particularly Nora's role in it. What do you think about the setup?
Yeah, I completely agree. It was just a fantastic setup for the story, where he's here trying to vacation. And to your point about him fitting in town, like the fact that, he puts on his old school shirt and his cardigan and everything. He's laying in the hammock and he's reading his old detective novels. Like, it was exactly like that painting of a person kind of reconnecting with their youth that I loved in his character. But he was there to just enjoy himself, and he kept saying, "I'm just on vacation." And you're absolutely right. The way that Nora really pushed to create this mystery for him to solve by dropping hints to reporters and stuff, and kind of getting things going. I thought that was fantastic. It was a great way for things to play.
For sure. And that it started with her trying to buy him this present, right? She goes out to get him this present of the windmill and bring this present to the house. And it turns out the present was part of a crime that, as you articulated earlier, it serves as the undercurrent of this sleepy little town with apparently no crime in it. And it ends up being not just a crime, like an art crime, but a high-tech, high-stakes, like, spy thriller, too, buried under the paint of these paintings. I thought was amazing.
Well, and, very fitting for a wartime film. Somebody is selling secrets to a foreign power. Like that. Yeah. There's really quite an interesting line that they had put into this that I was like, wow, okay, that seems a little bigger than some of his other mysteries that he's been dealing with.
But I don't feel like it was too big a swing for the story. Right.
No,
And sometimes you get that feeling like you could easily see how this movie could have gotten a little bit out of hand. I feel like the way it was portrayed, the way that Thorpe sort of navigated balancing this war power thing with the charm and the wit of Nick and Nora, and the caper of this painting all the way to the big reveal was something that I thought really worked. I really enjoyed the way it was revealed. I enjoyed the science of it. The fact that his dad has his own laboratory in his house was a convenience that I don't feel like was overstated. It was a convenience that felt appropriate to the reveal of the movie, was set up appropriately throughout. The lab was used a number of times in the movie, particularly early on for the autopsy of the man who dies in the doorway, Peter Bergen, whatever his name was. Anyhow, all of that I thought worked really well. Is there anything for you that didn't work about the mystery and the setup and the staging of the thing?
No, I thought it all worked great because we have a number of different layers to it. And this is what I like with these stories where there are a lot of things happening and a lot of questionable characters, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing something wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were involved in the murder. And for me, it was just a successful setup of these different characters and the story, and leading to, here's our spoiler horn, leading to the fact that the doctor did it. It all made sense to me. And it's funny because after the murder happens and he calls the doctor, and the doctor, we cut to the doctor's house and his housekeeper answers the phone and calls for him, and he comes from down the stairs. My first thought was, oh, he must have shot the guy because he was upstairs.
He was upstairs,
and and it had just been revealed he only lives a few houses down or something. I'm like, oh, okay, he probably did it. And then I immediately kind of dropped that. But I need to keep in my head, it's usually the person who's never painted as a red herring that ends up being the killer. And but yeah, I loved him as the killer. Everything tied together nicely. The mystery of the parentage of this person who had been killed, the way all of that played out with his mother and his uncle, like it all was really interesting. And on top of that, we had, which for me was one of maybe my favorite things in the film, was the fact that when Nick started going through the process of solving the crime, Nora was like our audience surrogate, like meta narrating like what was happening. Okay, now it's time for the payoff or whatever, and she's
this is the payoff. Yeah. Right. That was so good.
Or when Nick says to the cop to take everybody's guns, she's like, oh, but what's going to happen to the payoff? Like it was just a really fun way to put all of that together. So I had a great time.
Yes, totally was. I did have a moment where I was thinking, another director in another time for this movie, it wouldn't have been the doctor. Like, let's just say David Fincher made this movie and it was 1999 or 2005 or whatever. And David Fincher made this movie. Who would the killer have been, Andy?
I don't know. I'm not sure where you're going with this.
It would have been his own father.
Oh.
It would have been his own father. Yep. Totally. This would have, because I was thinking the whole time is like, he's going home to have resolution with his dad. And it turns out there is no hope for a father-son relationship. It's just another
horrible story.
That's exactly where I went.
Just a horrible story.
It was a dad, how could you story? Yeah. and the punchline is you can't go home again. That's the whole thing.
And you'll never get a pat on your back.
Sorrow. Yeah. No, you'll never get a pat on your back. And also Asta's head would have been in the box.
Wow. Okay.
That I can't help it. I can't help what I think sometimes.
Well, I want you to write that script and see if you can sell it to Hollywood.
We're going to do a 6-part special podcast event. It'll be an audio drama of The Thin Man Goes Home. But spoiler, it's his dad.
Oh.
Asta.
Asta, I will say.
He's looking older.
Well, I will say, I showed my wife when Asta does the little begging trick. And I'm like, should we work on teaching our dog to do that? Because it was really adorable. Come on. It was great.
Even when it was like speed ramped and looped and all of the different tricks they did with it.
Yeah, that was a good point, not relating to Asta, but there was that weird double take that we had when Nick was, I think when he was talking to, oh gosh, who was he talking to? Was it with Laura Bell? and they do like a weird moment where they reverse the film and play it back almost to try creating a double take with the characters, which was a little strange. But yeah, Asta, Asta's fine. I enjoy that Asta is there kind of as kind of comic relief, but I think I enjoy Asta more when Asta's in, helping Nick mode and kind of doing a little detective work, like going and pointing to the guy in the bushes or things like that. Whereas when Asta is like when they're on the train riding up to the town and they have to go sit in the luggage car because they have a dog. And Asta is getting picked on by the goats and goes and sits on a cage. And then it happens to be full of ducks and they start nibbling at his tail. And he goes and hides behind a milk jug. And all of that, I'm like, oh, all right, this is not my favorite stuff.
The Asta storyline did not live up to the Asta has a family with a cheating wife storyline in the second movie.
Well, we've never gone back to that either. Like,
no.
Even when they went back to San Francisco in the last film, it's never, they never returned to the home life. So I'm wondering if Asta really did put her out.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, dogs can be hard.
Yeah, she's gone.
And it isn't, I'm so curious in terms of foreshadowing next week's show. I'm very curious what they do with the last movie because Asta doesn't make it to the last movie.
Yeah, that's sad.
Asta's last credit, I think we've talked about this, was 1945, Rhapsody in Blue, immediately after The Thin Man Goes Home. So, dog days.
Yeah, that's what happens to a dog, right? They don't live that long.
And people, also. Everybody dies.
Everybody dies, yeah.
Is Asta's head in the box in the last movie? That would be amazing.
Oh, God.
I love dogs so much.
Stuff.
Why am I doing this?
I'm not sure what your
I love dogs.
What are your goals
I can't get
here?
Fincher out of my head. Okay.
So here's the thing. Obviously, with these films, they are very light Dashiell Hammett. I don't think that I had mentioned this, but I actually am reading Red Harvest right now.
You didn't mention it.
It is a very gritty, thick of what's the rumpus sort of dialogue mystery story, and a lot of murders in particular in that one because the detective basically starts a gang war in this little town, and it is it is very gritty, bloody stuff. It is not funny in the least, and so to think that he crafted The Thin Man, I just think that the writers that we had starting this franchise probably really pulled the comedy up to give it more of that lighter tone. And as this series has gone, it's drifted farther from Dashiell Hammett, other than just the fact that it's Nick and Nora Charles, the characters from his book. I think that Hollywood has kind of said, this is kind of a family story. It's something for everybody. And I think all the Asta stuff is probably there. If I was a kid, that would probably have been my favorite stuff.
Yeah, but probably. Sorry, I got sidetracked because one of the mentions in IMDb trivia on Asta, Skippy the dog outgrowing the part. I don't know about Skippy the dog. Skippy
died in 1951.
Yeah, right. That's
well, and we should just say Asta was not played by Skippy in this film or the previous. It is a different dog playing Asta at this point. And you could tell there's no spots on, like this dog had spots. And I was like, I don't think Asta had spots.
No, I don't think so too. All right. So the other thing that I think is important that we talk about, it has been a long time since we've gone down this road. But when I say to you, Andy, Colt Official Police, Colt Detective Special, Winchester Model 1892 Rifle, Colt 1911, Type 99 light machine gun. Andy, what website am I visiting?
That must be IMFDB, Internet Movie Firearms Database.
Internet Movie Firearms Database. Yes, the Internet Movie Firearms Database, which tells us what this very special gun at the end that Lloyd Corrigan, playing the part of Dr. Bruce Clayworth, picks up, the suppressed Type 99 light machine gun. And there has been some, as there is on the internet, consternation about what kind of gun this really is. Is it really a Japanese gun, like they said, or is it actually a different kind of gun that they found, the American version of the same gun? But it looks very much like the Arisaka Type 99 machine gun, 7.7 by 58 millimeter Arisaka machine gun, and it's a very, very sexy weapon that you can find on the IMFDB.
Yeah, I think in the movie they call it a World War, is the souvenir World War II Japanese Nambu sniper rifle.
Yes. And that is a gun that has been seen in a number of different movies after 1944. According to the IMFDB, this is the first movie that it appeared in. And from there, it went to Daughters of China, Retreat Hell, Never So Few, Merrill's Marauders, MacArthur, blah, 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 so many, Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, The Thin Red Line. Anytime Japanese soldiers are portrayed in film, they're carrying this gun all the way through. The Wolverine in 2013, Japanese soldiers carried this gun. So
wow.
This was appears to be the cinematic debut of the Type 99 light machine gun Arisaka. It was also capable of being fitted with a bayonet, which was not portrayed in this movie.
Yeah. Interesting.
IMFDB.org.
Gotta love it.
What else we got?
Well, we talked about Powell and Loy as our leads here. Going back to the cast, though, there are a few people that definitely stood out that I wanted to call out. Like Edward Brophy, first of all, he was actually he's Brogan, the guy who keeps popping up in the bushes, who is the
central red herring.
Yeah, well, he's kind of the red. He's not really ever a red herring for Nick, but he's definitely Nora's red herring.
Yeah,
he kind of is this thug who is presenting himself as a postcard salesman. So it's kind of funny. And but he was actually in the first Thin Man film. He played a character named Joe Morelli in that film. But Edward Brophy is a familiar face in this franchise, so I just wanted to call him out because I did enjoy him in the part. I thought he was fun, and the way that he kind of had that relationship with Nick, I thought was worked well for me. The next one was Donald Meek, who is the owner of the store selling all the art pieces, Willie Crump. He is a face that is so recognizable. He's just one of those very much character face that was in all sorts of things. He was in You Can't Take It With You. He was in Stagecoach. He's just one of those guys who is a regular Hollywood face through this period, through like the 30s and 40s in particular. Like you'll see him pop up a lot because he's a great character actor, and he's a face that is very fun. And seeing him as the flustered owner here, who doesn't want to sell this painting to Nora, who kind of talks him into it, like it was just great. He was a great character for this bit part.
I would say the character of Willoughby Peavy, the nephew we're introduced to in the very early part of the film as Nick goes home, is also one of those suspicious characters who's there and then disappears for a while. He was one of those faces too, and I couldn't name his top four for you, but he's got 280 credits. From 1933 through Perry Mason, 1964, 22 episodes of Perry Mason as Judge Bates and Judge Cadwell. He was a number of judges, and lots of westerns. He was in all the westerns as a gunslinging, sometimes do-gooder, sometimes ne'er-do-well. But I would not have been able to tell you that his top four were In a Lonely Place, Rocket Ship XM, Giant Claw, and Tennessee Johnson. Haven't seen any of those. But man, did his face look familiar to me. 280 credits.
Yeah.
Studio players, man.
A great actor. In a Lonely Place, Bogey. That's definitely a strong one to check out. He was also in like Invaders from Mars, the original Invaders from Mars. And so he's one of those very much a face. He played a lot of military guys, or as you said, a lot of people in Westerns and stuff. So very big, very famous. Another one is Nick's dad, who was played by Harry Davenport. Very much another great character actor who is in like, I remember him probably most from Meet Me in St. Louis. I just love that film, but he was also in Gone with the Wind as the doctor. He was in You Can't Take It With You. Again, these actors who were like contracted with studios at this time, it's like they were in, 4 or 5 films a year sometimes. He did Foreign Correspondent with Hitchcock. And so just very busy. King's Row, we've talked about him there. He was Colonel Skeffington in that one. And so, just somebody who has a great face for film and used it well in the many, many films that he ended up doing over his career.
Was it Laura Ronson, the daughter? Was that her name? Laura, what was her full name? What they keep calling her?
Laura Bell.
Laura Bell.
Yeah.
Gloria DeHaven.
Yes.
What'd you know of Gloria DeHaven? Anything? 82 credits.
I just want to say I loved the way that she portrayed an actress, somebody who was taking acting classes, and then everything that she did in the movie was performed. Like she was being so big and putting herself out there as a performer. And that just always cracked me up. I thought she played the role well. I don't know, other than she had a bit part in Modern Times with Chaplin. I don't know much of anything else that she has done. I don't know if I could call anything out specifically that I had seen that she had been in, other than things like she was in a couple episodes of Fantasy Island, things like that, Love Boat, things like that, Highway to Heaven. But
Andy, Ryan's Hope, Andy, 79 episodes, right when I would spend my summers watching soap operas.
I never watched Ryan's Hope, but yeah, she was in a lot of TV through the 80s. So it's entirely possible I had seen her later in her life in some capacity.
Her last bit was 2000, Touched by an Angel. Did you ever watch Touched by an Angel?
No, never did.
Probably another thing where you just don't watch TV.
Probably. We should talk a little bit about Carl Freund, who was the DP on this, considering that this whole franchise, the reason we're talking about it is because the very first film was part of our black and white cinematography of James Wong Howe series, looking at him because of his great cinematography, the shadowy use of black and white. And here we are with Carl Freund, another very prominent name in cinematography in early film. I mean, he'd shot stuff like Metropolis, which we've talked about on the show, Dracula, when they did that, and a lot of kind of the early horror crime films, Murders in the Rue Morgue, and a lot of the noirish sort of stories. So knowing that kind of his history, what did you think of the look of the film? Did it lend itself to anything that made it stand out?
I don't think so. I don't think there was anything that they were doing in this film that felt particularly of that piece. And maybe it was because it wasn't a hardcore sort of noir film. There were some bits. I liked the, when he's sneaking around Crazy Mary's apartment, and looking through drawers and stuff, Mary comes out and hits him over the head. Like there is some interesting use of shadow play in there. Same thing actually it wasn't Mary's, it was Peter's apartment.
Yeah.
And then Mary's shack out on the bog. That I did think were interesting and compelling sort of uses of camera and location. Overall, the movie is pretty straightforward. I don't know. Is there something I'm missing?
Well, I don't think that there's anything that stands out too much, but I do think that for the mystery elements of the film, I mean, yeah, it's a Thin Man film with the light comedy touches. And so I don't think the cinematographers really have ever been playing too heavy in the noirish lighting. But I would say that I felt in those darker scenes that Freund was bringing some of the darkness out. Like you've got scenes in the backyard at night when Brogan is in the bushes. Like the way that the darkness worked, I always felt was effective. The shadow play that we have, like with Crazy Mary's shadow when she clocks Nick over the head. There was just a lot of moments throughout that I felt lent itself to allowing the mystery to feel at home in this particular place. So to that end, I thought Freund clicked well with the type of film to make it look good without going too over the top noir.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the look of the film, what do you think of the sound of the film? The music by David Snell and some uncredited Lenny Hayton, Bronislaw Caper. Anything stick with you out for you for the music?
I nothing that sticks out, I would say. It probably all fit in context of kind of what I've grown to expect from the Thin Man films.
Yeah, me too.
So to that end, I think that it's a similar thing where they're finding the right tone to fit kind of that comedy mystery side of the world, side of the genre.
Yeah, I mean, fun movie.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it more than I thought. I think there were some folks in the community who kind of set me up saying that this wasn't one of the better ones. And I kind of feel like I disagree. I enjoyed my time with this movie more than I expected to.
I, at this point, would probably say it's my second favorite. I had an absolute blast with it. Yeah, I just thought it was a fantastic film. So,
shock and awe. Shock and awe.
Well, there it is.
All right.
Well, we'll be right back, but first, our credits.
The next reel is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. Music by Southside Aces, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at d-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Big awards movie. This one, they made it for awards. It was probably released in December, to just limited to get that early Oscar nod. Right? I mean, am I right?
You're
big.
so right. No, no. This was a tricky. It did not play as a film that was designed for awards. Interestingly, I was looking because I've talked about how there weren't a lot of awards happening at this particular point in time. The Oscars was kind of the thing. Well, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association did actually start the Golden Globes in 1944. So it would have been possible for this to have been nominated for something in those early days, but it wasn't. Yeah, they started Best Motion Picture Drama in 1943. The Song of Bernadette won that year, and then Going My Way in 1944. And, this film came out in 1944, and so would have lost to Going My Way had it been nominated. I don't actually see that they had been nominating other films. They had basically just been, for the first 5 years, they had just been picking the film that won. It wasn't until 1949, that was the first year that the Golden Globes, they picked 2 films, but only one of them won. And then after that, it looks like for a while at least, they move into picking 5 films, very similar to the Oscars. So, yeah, it's interesting to see that at this particular point in time, other people were saying, hey, we should do some sort of award as well. It's just in this particular case, this one didn't get anything.
Yeah. How about the numbers, Andy? How to do at the box office? What did Eddie have for us this week?
That's right. Good old Eddie Mannix does it again. Well, as we've said, for the first film in the franchise not directed by W.S. Van Dyke, this budget was $1.4 million, or nearly $20 million in today's dollars. That is actually back to the higher budget again in the franchise for some reason during the war. I'm not really sure. This movie had a January 25th, 1945 release. Not sure why it ended up in 1945, but my guess would be it had something to do with making it during the war, Loy's busy schedule with wartime efforts. And it's interesting because in some places, this is actually listed as a 1944 film. And I think it's specifically because they had a trade showing for the film in November 1944 in New York City. And then, I don't know, I guess kind of a Christmas premiere, weirdly in Cumberland, Maryland. I'm not actually sure why. It was actually Christmas Eve. In 1944, and then it opened in January 1945. So it's like they had a few previews beforehand. And so some places do list it as a 1944 film, but it is in fact 1945 when it was released to the public. This opened opposite National Velvet, and it did find its audience, earning $2.8 million domestically, or $40 million in today's dollars. That is the same gross as the last film, actually, but since the budget was high, this one had the lower profitability. It still did well with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $201,000, and likely was considered a wartime success.
All right. Well, I'm still glad we're watching these movies. I thought by this time in this series, 6-movie series on The Thin Man, we'd be in the dregs of the 1-2 star, just kind of rolling it out just because that's what we do. But I'm impressed that these are still entertaining. Glad we're doing it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, we didn't really talk about the alcohol aspect of this, but
no,
the fact that Nick is drinking cider through this whole film. I mean, they've written it into the script that he's drinking cider because it's hard to get a drink in his hometown. He doesn't want his dad to think he's a drunk, all of this sort of stuff. And so you don't see any cocktail shakers in this. It's just Nick drinking cider out of a ridiculously large flask, which is kind of funny. But according to The Hollywood Reporter, April 1944, they said wartime liquor rationing prompted producer Everett Riskin, who's actually the writer's brother, to eliminate the heavy drinking that had been an integral part of Nick and Nora's daily life in previous The Thin Man films. So there you go. That's why, even in this film, they're showing Nick and Nora are also rationing their liquor. You should too.
They're doing their part for the war effort, Andy. All right.
I wonder if that was a note from Myrna Loy. As somebody,
right?
Yeah, I mean, really. Do
your part. We need the Red Cross needs the booze for wartime sanitation.
All right. Well, it's a good film. I really, really enjoyed it, and as I said, this very, very much might be my second favorite in the franchise. We only have one more to do, and we'll look at the trailer for it here right now, and that is Song of the Thin Man.
If this rampage of respectability persists, we'll have to buy you a bulletproof girdle. You're magnificent. We just have to walk 10 minutes in various directions until we find the right institution. What, you've got the nose of a bloodhound.
Don't let him worry you. The rest of your face looks fine.
I wouldn't know anything about Hollis.
Your eyes are getting shiny, Miss Page.
And your mouth's getting big, Mr. Charles.
Where is he?
Why don't you ask me if I killed Tommy Drake?
You probably had good reason to.
How about a story, Dad?
Oh, no story for you tonight. You've got to get some sleep.
But your stories always put me to sleep.
I said I'd take that piece of... Go to easy that night, brother. Just one word from me and that dog of mine will tear you to pieces. Well, buddy, I guess this is it. Time for that little bombshell. Tell everyone how Tommy Drake was murdered. Tell them why Fran Page was murdered. Tell them about the someone who went to her apartment. That someone is here among us now.
Letterboxd, Andy. We need to talk about Letterboxd. You know what Letterboxd is. It's our very favorite social media network for movie lovers. And if you fall in love with it too, fair listener, and you want to share your reviews and your watch lists and follow other people's reviews and watch lists, all you need to do is head over to letterboxd.com and sign up. If you fall in love with it, you can upgrade to a pro or patron account, and you can save a little money using our discount code NEXTREEL, or just visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd. It'll whisk you over to the checkout page with that 20% off already applied. Andy, what are you doing? Is this a 7-star and 4 hearts?
7-star for us, 2 stomachs. Throw it all in there. I'm trying to remember. Let's see. After The Thin Man, I had given 4 stars and a heart. Another Thin Man, 3 stars and a heart.
Yep.
Then
Shadow for me was 4 stars and a heart.
That was back up there for you. Shadow for me was
3.5?
I think it was 3.
Okay.
I feel like this one's back up at 4. I just had an absolute blast with it. So The Thin Man Goes Home, 4 stars and a heart from me.
I am not quite as high. I think I was more impacted by the more sort of stoic kind of approach to the movie. I wanted more laughs. I probably was impacted by the fact that I expected more laughs and didn't get them, and so the bar was probably set too high. I'm going to stick right at 3 stars. So it's a real roller coaster for me. 4-3, 4-3, 4-3. Who knows what next week is? But that's where we are. 3 stars and a heart for me.
All right. Well, that will leave it at 3.5 and a heart over on Letterboxd. If you want to get your own pro or patron membership, just use the discount code NEXTREEL or visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd. You can get 20% off, and it works for renewals as well. So what did you think about The Thin Man Goes Home? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into our Show Talk channel in our Discord community, where we will be talking about it this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
All right. So I want to play a guess the star game with you.
Okay. Are you going to read it first and then I have to guess what the rating is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. This is Jun Dai has this to say about The Thin Man Goes Home. Probably has the most interesting story, despite leaning on a few cliches. A brilliantly done climax. Then this particular Thin Man film seems to be under the illusion that people are here to see the mystery and not just see the antics of a detective that solves everything through a haze of martinis and his wife who eggs him on through a haze of martinis. They teetotal their way through this whole film, and the comedy is much diminished. The story still doesn't make much sense, but it is more interesting. I noted that Carl Freund was the cinematographer. Other than a few scenes, the photography didn't stick out that much. I'd be curious to know more about him. That is from Jun Dai. That's from August 17th, 2021. How many stars did Jun Dai give this movie?
I know you like only giving full stars, no half stars, but that never stops you from pulling half-star reviews from people.
True.
Or stars with half stars, or reviews with half stars, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like it was that bad of a review, though. So I feel like I would say, I mean, it can't be... I don't know. The fact that you're doing this makes me think it's probably not like a 2.5. I'm going to say 1.5 stars.
Okay. If you had written this review, how many stars would you associate it with?
I mean, it's not that bad. I would say 2 or 3. I mean, it's a fine review. It's fine.
Yeah.
It makes me think that the person thought it was a fine film. I didn't love it, but it was fine.
Me too. I might put it as a, if I were still doing half stars, it'd be 2.5, but 3 stars. Like, it's a middle of the road review. Jun Dai gave this a half star.
What?
This is a half-star review. Half star.
Holy cow, Jun Dai.
What level of exuberance must accompany a 5-star movie from Jun Dai? That's amazing.
That is crazy.
In fact, now I'm going to go find Jun Dai.
There you go.
What do you got?
Well, I've got a 4-star by Ely. who 4 stars and a heart, who has this to say: Nick's insistence on trapping everyone in a room together so he can explain at length how he solved the case is peak drama, and I live for it. I do too, Ely. I do too.
Peak drama.
So good.
Oh, Jundai gave Paddington 2 1 star. And the first line of the review, Andy, is an improvement on the original in almost every way.
That makes me wonder about the original.
1 star. How about Paddington? It was okay. I liked their house. Generally enjoyable. Pretty dumb. I hear the sequel is better. 0.5 star.
Wow. There's somebody who's not generous with stars.
Okay. Have you seen the movie Small Axe?
Nope.
5 stars. Each film in Small Axe is great, but together they're greater than the sum of their parts. How about Tokyo Story?
Yes.
1953. You've seen it?
That's a big one.
5 stars. No film is more fundamental than this one.
Well, that's probably a pretty common review for that film.
8.5. 5 stars. The greatest film about filmmaking. My Neighbor Totoro gets 5 stars. All right. Wow. That lineup is I don't know what word is to describe the variance of stars. Very generous with language. Thanks, Letterboxd. It is hard to believe we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material from all of our adapted film discussions. Purchasing through our links support the show at no extra cost to you.
In Season 12, the focus was big franchises and series. We covered both Paddington films, adapted from the beloved children's book character created by Michael Bond.
Oh, I love those films so much.
Hugh Grant is perfect.
For our Pitch Perfect series, the first film was adapted from Mickey Rapkin's nonfiction book about collegiate a cappella competitions.
It's like a short story of my life, literally. I lived college a cappella.
Sing it, brother.
I lived college a cappella.
I didn't mean literally.
You know who you're talking to, right? The Twilight Saga dominated the season with 5 films adapted from Stephenie Meyer's vampire romance novels, Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and the 2 Breaking Dawn parts.
Dominated with awkward romance and nonsense logic is more like it.
That too.
Another Thin Man brought us back to Dashiell Hammett's only Thin Man sequel based on other Hammett material, The Farewell Murder, that wasn't just based on the characters from the first film.
We talked about Trainspotting and its sequel, T2 Trainspotting, adapted from Irvine Welsh's novels.
I hate the sequel's name.
I do too.
And the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy adapted from J.R.R. Tolkien's epic fantasy series.
Love these.
Extended editions all the way, baby.
Plus, all the Mission Impossible films based on the 1960s TV series.
And we've still got at least one more to go.
Members got to hear us chat about The Hustler and The Color of Money, adapted from Walter Tevis's books.
Get all of these books and more at our Originals page, thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read from the movies we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals.